Good. They made us many promises, more than I can remember. But they kept but one. They promised to take our land, and they took it. Chief Roclaw. Framework. The resolution that the United States should amend the Native American Government Protection and Reparation Act to significantly accelerate the power of reparation on the culturally identifiable human remains in the museums of the United States of America. Resolution doesn't matter. Second. All definitions are contextual unless you ask the PMC. We affirm the resolution by asking why the United States was set up in the first place. The question is accepted in the words of the framework argument. First of all, debate should be about the liberation of the oppressed, who are advocates of the resistance of the root cause of antagonism. B point, any other framework or structural violence because they cause the shift in discourse of a positive rhetoric through the magnitude and time frame. The C point is that one person thinking a paralysis is a process of justice. If we ignore the minorities' voices, we constantly ignore the fourth argument. Our advocacy to engage in the resolution between the ontological and teleological calculus. We should calculate outcomes, but must have side constraints on them to stop the words to crashes that occur on minorities. And the fifth argument is the impact calculus first. Agency is the prerequisite to all other claims. No valid life means there's no impact. The second argument, the intelligibility, the 8 points in treatment of the oppressed shows the way that we are able to deem violence our purpose the gateway because we recognize the universality of suffering. The third argument is that invisibility of violence. When we push suffering under the rug, we render violence to be invisibility under the alternative frameworks. We can't address issues because they are deemed didn't exist. Sixth argument. We cannot debate the truth without the resolution, without knowing what the resolution means. It must only not meant with discussion, but it is also negative against indispensable positions. And seventh argument, advocacy. We reject the resolution starting point for debate. The resolution is value neutral. We frame the affirmative as a means of recognizing, questioning the wrong parts of the United States. Thus, in this round, we advocate to give back the land. Contention to the thesis. We begin with a question of the USFG. Before we can role-play the USFG, we must understand who we are role-playing. We are not okay with defending governments that are able to take lands from individuals. Our oriented result around the national identity that means that the states are able to exclude people who do not fall within one identity. The current physical and social reality of what is shaped by the forceful taking of the land of the Native Americans to shift the recognition of who owns what is an arbitrary and border on the power relations, and these changes came potential equation of the subaltern in the border in America. We are not only questioning physical, we're not only questioning the land that happened, but also the taking of the land to certain cultural and social foundation for what it meant to be Native American, and specifically the links to the res. Any questions? Good. I thought you raised your hand. My bad.
Just repeat your phone, actually.
Yeah. First. The conquest of private ownership that allowed it was the Western idea that was able to allow European colonization that took away the land. Arnold is able to indicate that this led to a craft and things. First of all, it led to the repression of the Native American method because we were able to use human or Westernized thought that allowed us to be able to change, that was able to allow us to control the process of what happened to the Native American. Second argument, they said reparation, the act of idea of able to change the way the Native Americans human remains able to see in museums was the foundation of that would have never happened if we were never able to kill the Native American in the first place by taking the entirety of the land. Also, our belief that we should be able to take the land, so we should be able to act upon what happens to Native American Museum is a bad thing because it still takes the identity of the American community because we own their human remains in museums and crap like that, which is probably a bad thing. We believe the land ownership is a prior step because it allows us to give back them what was rightfully theirs before we could even give back stuff like their human remains. We gotta first understand that was theirs and they can never be able to. We can never be able to change ownership of stuff like that. Next is the impacts. First. The discussion of Native American has constantly been able to repress. Our arguments, the oppression of subaltern voice only condones when individuals are constantly in silence. Our arguments come from Spivak. Spivak is able to isolate who the subaltern is. Now, what is subaltern? Subaltern is an individual who constantly speaks out and outcries, but their voices are heard by the public, but no one acts upon it. Our argument that is the way the Native Americans constantly demanded their land back has never been represented, even though they have told us multiple times and time again that they are being oppressed. They do not like the violence that is occurring.
Why are people going to act on your voice?
It's not my voice, it's Chief Redcoat.
Okay.
Yeah. Secondly, subaltern voices come first because it allows violence to perpetuate. In a world where we do not listen to the subaltern voice, we allow the constant violence to reproduce. We also destroy their voice to be always there, which means that we allow violence to occur as a way of pushing down the rug. Which means that we know the violence is happening, it's just that we do not act upon it. This also points to the root cause of all violence. In a world where we do not look to the subaltern voice, we allow oppression to continue, which found crazy validation for any single oppression to occur. Which means that the reason why people are able to die in certain questions like slavery and stuff like that was because people weren't speaking out about the issue slavery, even though they recognize that it was a problem. The reason why questioning of the anthropocentrism, the reason why animals are dying is because we are okay with them dying, even if they demand that you not die in the first place. Also, subaltern voices come first because we will always be able to make it in the world where subaltern voices are not able to thrive in spaces like institutions like this. We can never present a voice, which means that we have to present their voice in a way that they want to present it in the question of what they want, arguments that they want to give us to last. So which means that we are a critical reading of these subaltern voices in a method that will be able to allow them to flourish in spheres like this, which means that we do not co-opt their voice, but also represent their voice in a method that they would probably would agree with. It's also subaltern voices in space like this is uniquely key because it allows us to be able to speak in institutions that have represented them to not be productive. Our argument is pretty simple, that this debate space in itself was happening on land that was stolen from the Native Americans. Our argument is that we should be able to allow subalterns to actually have a voice in spaces like this because they're constantly repressed and marginalized. Now, I guess continuing towards the advocacy and solvency. Our program is giving is a process of dependent on understanding of giving back the land. We will defend the imitation, giving back the land. We will also defend that we are culture critique. I mean, we are able to represent subaltern a voice that they want something right now. Here are a couple of that benefit of solvency. First of all, poetry is key to break down the foundation of identity, which means that in a world where we're able to read their poetry, we're able to take away the distinction between the land and the Latin American sex. Second argument is key to break down the debate institution that stop is key to break down reason why we debate. We cannot shout from other sides of the river and not be able to come together. So we should look to the creating a synthesis between what the Native Americans want. Also, the third argument, fixed identity creates a paralysis because they force the Native American to confine or be co-opted by just being on American land, because they can always simply say that you are on American land, this is your art to happen, which means that if we have to be able to represent subaltern as an ontological sense, to be able to constantly be able to represent their voice in such as like this in the first place. Also, fourth argument, the power of narrative is probably the most important thing because it changes the interrogation, then it creates a true testing paradigm that allows us to challenge our oppression in a world where we do not represent the poetry. We are able to make standpoints of arguments that we believe would be happening. I look to empirical analysis of PhD authors, but that does not function because in poetry, and narrative gives you an exact speak of how the people felt in times, which gives you the most word from the impact. Also, giving back the land with solvency because it allows them to be able to present the voice that they have so cried and wanted.
Okay. It's 3 off and then case. It's an off. I'm reading it.
How many?
3 off.
No idea.
Here's how much battery does your phone have? I don't know. Okay. Ready?
The first obstacle with the interpretation is that a topical act must defend instrumental action through the United States federal government. The violation is that there is no defense of an instrumental action through the United States federal government. B is the definitions. Should implies a plan. This is an American Heritage Dictionary in 2003. Again, additionally, the federal government is in Washington D.C. That's in Carter Online in 2000. That's in Carter Online. And the resolute resolve means that this is a policy debate, which means that they have to enact a policy. C is vote neg. There are a couple reasons here. First is decision making. Under this is the purpose of the debate is to increase to enhance our skills as decision makers. We are all individual policymakers. B here is that passive government action are key to increasing our ability to make organizational decision makings, are a key to enacting societal change. There's a lot of analysis we can make on this where we tell you that when you are making organizational decisions, it makes it actually easier for you to make more easier decisions in the long run, because organizational decisions are the hardest decisions to make in the long run, which means that we increase our ability to make decisions as individual actors. Like asking questions about whether or not we should give back the land. There's a topical version of this app that they could read. The United States federal government would give back the land, and they refuse to do this, which means that they don't get access to any of the organizational decision making stuff. And then the next argument under organizational decision making is mutually accessible information. There's a wide swath of government policy information on this topic, which means that they're actually excluding the negative from the debate. There's no reason for you to. This is going to come first. And B here is that it's harder decision making increases our ability to make easier decisions later. The government action and the instrumental defense of an organizational action is the most difficult decision that debaters are able to make. This is key. It's like when you run at high altitude to train for running at low altitude so that you can run fast, which means that debate should be a place where we make organizational decisions. 2 here is limits. I'll get to the end of my speech 5 times. 2 is limits. There are a bounded list of affirmatives that this resolution presents There's a pre-round deliberation is key to education. If neg doesn't have access to the arguments that they are making, to this give back the land shell that they are reading, that we are not able to get education from this debate. We are sitting through a lecture on the 1AC, which is not educational because we are not generating class, and there's no ability for the negative to truth test the affirmative. Three here essentially is that our method solves, even if they win, that we should give back the land. Having a devil's advocate in the debate space is always good because it helps us avoid groupthink. Onto the next off is the K. Focusing on radical politics trades off with a structural critique of Cap. That's Willie's 1812. The very nature of the division of labor and Cap causes workers to blame us to ahistorical notions of society and the government for contradictions and theories of the... What does that say? Of identity, return to the same structures that they are trying to split, they are trying to oppose. Cap causes extinction and destroys value of life. That's Simonovic and Sedem. The Cap creates conditions in which people are struggling to survive with cases of degeneration of people as beings. Now, they make this art, and the link here is that, like, capitalism caused a lot of the issues that we see with Native Americans where, like, the land was stolen in order for the drive for profits. There's going to be no ability to give back the land until there is no longer a capitalist profit off of this land, which means that the critique is an ethical priority. Thus, the alternative, vote negative to endorse the centrality of anti-capitalist rhetoric. Vote negative to endorse the centrality of anti-capitalist rhetoric. Basically, this is key. You have to fight for social movements from the bottom of Cap's crises. Contradicting Cap's crises opens up a unique opportunity for universal spaces to challenge it, but clarity of vision and focus on Cap are necessary for success. Otherwise, extinction becomes inevitable. As Captain Fisherman in 14. Onto the case terms. Their academic representation of the subaltern locks in an investment in the oppression of the other for whom we are allowed to speak. They are confined to a position of perceptual what?
Wait, is this on case?
These are just like case terms, yeah.
Perceptual lack.
Reinscribing the very violence that they denounce. This is Challenge 93. The terms such as oppression are being used. The Maoist turns all people from non-Western cultures into a subaltern. Their representation of the other as sub ignores hierarchies within other cultures and reinscribes the oppression that they're trying to solve for. And the speaking for others decide they're championing from afar is cultural appropriation that serves to reinscribe oppression. That's Alcott in 91. This means that they cannot solve the affirmative because when they are speaking for others, they are appropriating the culture of the Native Americans in order to try to gain a rhetorical victory in a debate round. As long as they demand the ballot as a response to suffering, they infinitely perpetuate hierarchies that the privileged are rewarded for exploiting the suffering that they have caused. This turns the case. That's why Sermon 12, lionizing Western activists when they are still complicit in the oppression, reinscribes the very oppression that they are trying to solve for. And the deferral term. A demand on the state is a means of deferring responsibility, reinscribing the implication and complicity in systems of violence. And also the suffering market turn. We exchange pity for pain. This is Beaujard in 94, talks about the idea that loss and suffering, like the loss and suffering of the Native Americans, are negotiable and for sale, and in no way undermine the military-industrial complex and the capital complex that causes these issues in the first place. Means that they can never solve their terminal solvency deficit to the affirmative. What? Anything else?
You're good.
Okay. On to the app. So first, they like their entire framework argument is like they all their definitions are contextual, whatever. They say that they have to talk about the oppressed and like you can't ignore these minority voices. We think that even if you can't ignore minority voices, like the fact that the app is trying to use them to get a ballot in an out round is bad because they are commodifying the oppression of these people in order to gain rhetorical victory. That's pretty problematic when you think about it because unless they can prove to you that they talk if they can't actually, don't allow them to weigh their impacts that they can't actually solve for against our framework and against our case terms. We're telling you that they reinscribe the oppression and then also, you're going to win our method of debate is better. They say that deontology comes first. On that framework argument, our framework comes first. Defending a plan text is not it's an additive requirement. It asks them to use this rhetoric to defend a topical plan text, which means that at the end of the debate, if you think that organizational decision-making is a better method for making decisions, you pull the trigger for the negative. They say that there's no truth without meaning. Sure, but there's no reason that they can't defend a topical version of this affirmative, right? They say that they reject the res. We'd say that that's probably bad because it gives the neg literally zero ground. And at the point that they don't disclose, that's probably a reason that you're going to be dropping them right there. Because if the neg cannot engage in the debate, they are taking our ability to engage away from us, which is, again, just another form of repression. Now, they say that they have to give back the land, and that this comes before role-playing, but it doesn't necessarily have to come before role-playing. You can role-play giving back the land. There's no reason that they can't do this. Now, they say that we need to talk about the subaltern, and we need to question the fact that we took the land, but the fact of the matter is that, like, their use of the subaltern to gain a rhetorical victory turns the case against them. No reason to vote aft. They say that they're taking, and then, the impact debate, like, the impacts are turned against them, we turn case, right? And then, like, there's no way that they solve. They're not actually going to give back the land, right? They see that, like, poetry is good.
Sure. So the order is going to be case flow, totality flow, pursuit flow. So, like, their case terms, like the chow stuff, I flow down on case. So that's where I'll be.
Can you say it one more time?
Okay, yeah, it's going to go the case flow, totality flow, critique flow. So just like go. Okay. There we go.
So case TK.
Is everybody good? Is everybody not ready? Alright, for sure. When you read a bunch of generic 2 and C catrix on case, you're never going to have a good time winning perceptual links to the 1EC. First of all, I'm going to accept the case of the affirmative here. The 1EC is a politics of liberation. My soul remakes itself with the creative act and remaking it in virtue. And our argument is that poetry is key to our identity. Look, let's go to the line by line here. They talk about the chow evidence, but this is fundamentally not construed to the act. The argument here is that we are uniquely representing the voice of the oppressed. Samir reads that poem at the top of the 1EC for a unique reason. The argument here is that the chow criticism is not uniquely, because we are uniquely talking about these spaces and using the voice of the oppressed in institutional spaces where they cannot participate. This is not really, they don't really get any unique offense off here because they fundamentally not contribute to chow critique specific to the case. Let's go to the speaking for other arguments. First of all, let's look at the method before identity. The argument here is that Butler makes a very, very persuasive claim to the point at which we are uniquely representing the voice of the subaltern. We are speaking with them, not speaking for them. Also, there's no impact as the speaking for other argument because at the point at which even if we are speaking for others, they are conceding arguments such as the role of the ballot issue, why representing their voice in the debate is key. They say the deferral boundary term. This argument doesn't really make sense. I don't know what the hell it's saying because they say that it's specifically talking about making demands on these states, but we have blatantly conceded the fact that we are not demanding these states. They say we commodify their suffering for the ballot. First of all, you can cross-apply speaking for other churches. It is not commodify the ballot. Our argument is that the ballot is uniquely because every instance you reject the affirmative vote is a question of marginalizing the issue of the red body to decide. It's not a question of us winning this debate round. Rather, it's a question of you as a judge actually voting for the best method of knowledge production. We are not commodifying the ballot. They say reject the resolution is bad because they don't have, because we didn't disclose. You asked us, we would have disclosed. We were right outside. And they say role-playing is good. They say role-playing is good because the argument is I'm going to leverage the case flow against the T-flow. I'll do that. We're going to on the T-flow. On top of that, the main argument I want you all to get on page is that poetry is uniquely key. The argument here is that this takes off most of their speaking for other terms because it's not me and Samir's voice that is in this debate piece. Rather, it's Chief Redcoat.
It also functions as a structural barrier for them achieving all the inevitability ballot. They have conceded that poetry is the only way to solve it.
Right. Oh, yeah. On top of that, they also conceded the B subpoint to the poetry claim that poetry is shaping identity at the point at which it is a structural barrier for them to resolve any of their impact. At the point at which these are all conceded arguments, poetry is a prerequisite.
Except the topical version of the app cannot solve because...
Yeah. Also means that the topical version of not only cannot solve, it also just doesn't exist. Alright, let's go to the top copy flow. Let's go with the counter-interpretation. Counter-interpretation, the affirmative is not as defended. The resolution, if we are reading links to the resolution is racist. It solves all of your offense because it probably means that it's a question of weighing. Yes, you can read generic arguments. The issue here is uniquely how you contextualize the one. You should take question. You should take question of uniquely talking about weighing between the two factors of our net benefit is critical education like the affirmative. At the point at which you are conceding the poetry argument, this argument is going to frame your ballot. This means it's a prerequisite to any other forms of moral thinking. First of all, you've also conceded for a reason the one issue why. Even if they do win that, they do some sort of discussion. Our discussion is uniquely not better. I'm going to accept
accent all of them here. One is reflexivity, resisting norms of power is always unconditionally good because it shapes the way that we approach other policy theories. That their deployment of topicalities and instances they rule in this debate because we are winning that sort of logic and modalities very exclusionary. The point of which they are even winning a fairness or impact claim to their T-shell is always going to be bad because it reproduces exclusionary logic. And our second argument is the prior question, the culture critique argument that Samir made at the bottom of the one is actually really ball around this question because the argument is that the warrant behind it is the way that the state conditions us to overarching terrible norms that they try to condition us to accept smaller instances of norm imposition. This is a logical policy frame, and the point at which a vote for the negative on topicality is literally a vote for you endorsing higher methods of structural violence. They are uniquely that sort of small real impositions will lead to large-scale structural violence. And third, they are also conceding the root cause argument, the ontological death of the red body uniquely frames all of your violence because the argument here is we're controlling the root cause. And fourth, it is a question of uniqueness. Samir is also winning arguments as to why the topical version of the app will never solve because you're conceding uniqueness evidence in the one is to why the state is inherently fucked up, which means that there is no unique ways the topical version can solve because literally the way that the state and civil society is premised, it is against the brown body. Why not? Yeah. They say decision-making, but first of all, your form of decision-making is very, very exclusive. Our argument is that do the impact level, like how could the app? The argument here is that this sort of decision-making skills and deliberation skills participate in a system of institutions that excludes the red body, which means that even if they do it at risk of an impact, they are conceding impact terms as to why that form of decision-making is bad. They say it is created to affect change, but this argument is very specifically in the context of demands on the state. But the point at which we are winning that the state in itself uniquely is biased against the red body. There is no unique reason why a topical version of the app can exist or why we can defend the USFG. You should probably we're going to go for a T version of the app. Should have refuted uniqueness in the 1AC. And they say we exclude the negative from debate, but two responses to your first law. You can methodologically test the affirmative. The argument here is literally every KF debate ever comes to the basically a methodological context of who has the best method for alleviating oppression in the 1AC. It's pretty simple. But on top of that, you've also shown that the CAP argument is just a generic. You could read it. And on top of that, the discussion of the disparity between the cognitive distance between the app and neg is always going to be inevitable. It's a debate. The question is that they're always going to be ground that is excluded from the app or neg, no matter what position I'm on, which means even if there's a mitigatory response and still conceding impact transition to why your argument is good. And on top of that, they don't even drop the debate or drop the argument, which question is, this is how you're going to evaluate the round. You're going to evaluate, like, the only debaters in this round that have extended substantive warrants as to how you should frame the round are me and Samir. At the point at which you read a T-shell about why we should defend USFG and just say fairness in education doesn't necessarily mean that you should win the round, because the argument here is that me and Samir are saying that poetry is key to shaping our identity, and you as a judge have a unique obligation as educators to help us propagate good nodes and knowledge productions in the debate space.
Also, the USFG is like racist as shit.
Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah. And then also, there's conceded like 3 minutes of uniqueness at the beginning of the YC. Can't stress enough. It's a complete takeout of the T version of the app. Because USFG is pretty racist. Alright, let's go to critique floor. Okay. First of all, I'm not answering any of your questions about criticism. And if you want to teach uniquely a big problem, they say radical politics trades off the trade-off with capital. The argument is here, we are not radical politics. The argument is here, we have complete dissonance from the political space. And second of all, the affirmative also solves the critique. And the point in which our argument, the thesis of our criticism is that the conception of private property and ownership is uniquely the foundation of capitalism. Giving back the land uniquely actually solves it. The argument here is that we solve the critique because we are the antithesis of capitalism. Because we are negating the idea of private property in first, which means that any of their offense literally should solved by the app.
You've also not spoken poetry about the oppressed.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And this debate would have been different if you read poetry about the oppressed, but the argument here is that you can cross the framing at the top of the K, the point where there's always a net benefit to the permutation because it is internally controls the internal subjectivity. Let's go to the alternative. Okay. First of all, permutation, there's no reason as to why we cannot endorse anti-capitalist rhetoric, which is what the advocacy of the 1C is, and to do the affirmative. There are no unique methodological reasons. The permutation, be the affirmative and the alternative. You're not winning any substantial reasons as to why we cannot do that. So here's basically the framework argument now. You conceded poetry functions before every single layer in the round. At the point at which you even win that we are unfair or unbad, you have to justify your mode of knowledge production. Also, no tutors in the app. Probably should have refuted uniqueness.
Order is case.
K first.
Actually, the order will be K, case T. K case T.
Just give us a minute to get our flows in order.
Yeah, that's cool. We need to do the same thing.
Case, Casey.
K case T. Onto the K, they say perm, extend the perm. We're not going to go for
No,
the
don't extend the perm. We're kicking the K.
We're kicking the K, like, we're not going for the K. Just concede it. Onto the Chow cases, they concede way too much on this to win. First of all, they talk about how poetry is key to solving for the affirmative, but that doesn't matter if the Chow case turns the entirety of the affirmative. It doesn't matter if their plan solves if the Chow case turns turn. Now they talk about how the AF is representing the voice of the oppressed. That's exactly what we're arguing against. We're saying that this is bad, using these people's voice and representing these people's voice, even though they can't ever feel the oppression of these people, is problematic because basically they're using these people's oppression to commodify the ballot. They're talking about how they're representing the voice of the oppressed. They literally cannot do that because they can never feel the oppression of these Native Americans who have gone through like years of problems. Like they're repping the voice of oppression. They're saying this. This is literally what we're arguing against. This is the link turn that we're trying to make here. Next, they talk about we're speaking with the subaltern, not for the subaltern. But we don't see the subaltern in the room here. The only team that's speaking is the Dougherty Valley team from is the app from Dougherty Valley. The subaltern is not actually in this round speaking. They're only representing these people's voices and screaming the way that they're talking about. Now they're talking about they're not commodifying the ballot. This is specifically a method of knowledge, but they're literally commodifying their ballot. They're saying you should vote for the affirmative, and the way they're using this is they're talking about these people's oppression, talking about these Native Americans who suffer. They read you narratives from these Native Americans, and then they say vote for the affirmative. That is literally the definition of commodifying the ballot. They have fundamentally undercovered and misunderstood the Chow cases, and that's really going to cost them the debate. Now they own that. I don't have time. Next, they talk about how poetry is key to solving, but as we talked about before, it doesn't matter if poetry solves because the Chow case turns turn. Like it doesn't matter if
If we turn the case, then there's no reason to buy their solvency evidence.
If we turn the case, there's no reason to buy their solvency evidence. Like they fundamentally miscover this. The fact that they're representing the voice of the oppressed is what's problematic. The fact that they are using these people, even though they can't actually feel their oppression, is what we're specifically saying is problematic, and this is specifically what turns the case against them. They concede this and they fundamentally miscover it. Okay. On to framework.
Yeah, 2 more extensions on here. Extend the suffering market disadvantage.
Okay, extend the suffering market disadvantage just so they completely concede. Also extend the speaking for others disadvantage for the fact that they're speaking for others, and this act of speaking for others is appropriating the culture of Native Americans. They entirely concede this disadvantage. At the point where they've conceded this disadvantage, there's literally zero reason for why you should vote for the affirmative at the end of this debate. This is on cold hard conceded. Now on to framework. They've also fundamentally undercovered framework. They talk about counter-interpretations don't need to defend the resolution and because the USFG is inherently bad. Our decision-making arguments specifically talk about that even if the USFG is bad, and even if the USFG has been entrenched in all its violence in the past, it is still good for education to defend the United States federal government because it helps with decision-making in the future. Additionally, it's also beneficial because learning about the United States federal government and learning about the intricacies of the policies of the United States federal government helps protest it later on into the future. When my partner makes this analysis, they completely conceded this. I don't have time. Next, they talk about education is good, and they talk about how our discussion is better, but this debate is literally not a discussion. This is literally the affirmative team giving a lecture about why we should give back the land. The negation team doesn't actually have the ability to actually be able to debate in this round because they haven't given us access to this debate because their plan is literally the most unpredictable thing I've ever seen. At the point, their education is not good because we're not getting education. The only people first of all, we're not getting any education from this. They're not getting any education from this. All we're getting is a lecture about why we should give back the land. We're not actually able to engage in this because they're completely unpredictable.
They said we could have disclosed. We asked them to disclose.
They said they could have disclosed. We asked them to disclose. They literally said we don't know where we're going to run it, and that was 10 minutes in effect. They did not disclose. Next, they talk about rules are bad and how specifically reproduces exclusionary link, and they talk about how the state is bad. My partner gives you analysis about how even if the state is bad, we still need to engage in the state in order to learn about it. Additionally, learning about it, even if the state is bad, that's probably good because my partner talks about how we need a devil's advocate. They consider this. Additionally, they talk about how it's good to make hard decisions even if the state is problematic because it's basically training in high. My partner gives you an analogy training on high altitudes help us run better later on in the future. Additionally, they talk about how they control the root cause and they talk about how they're the root cause, but we don't actually know if they're the root cause or not because we don't have the ability to engage. There's literally no debate happening here. Everything that the affirmative team is saying, we have to think is true because we are not able to engage. So don't buy any of the root cause arguments because we don't actually have the ability to know if that's the root cause or not because they don't give us any access to this debate. Next, we talk about the topical version of the app when solving it doesn't work. Yes, first of all, there is a topical version of the app. The fact that it might not solve is probably a reason why the affirmative team should advocate for it because that makes for a good debate. The fact that the topical version of the app may not solve and may not provide the goods, it is good for the debate because that allows us to actually engage in the debate. Additionally, the fact that it won't solve is also good because we talk about how making hard decisions and using things that may not work is good for decision making in the future. Additionally, we talk about even if the United States federal government is bad, this specific decision making skills that we get in this debate yard is good for other organizations who can be part of living life. Yeah, at the end of the day, like organizations are inevitable. Even if we're not like going to become like policymakers in the future, we're still like going to be like debate. We're still going to be in like student government and stuff like that. And learning about the government is necessary to solve for this. Additionally, we talk about how the state is inherently excludes the brown body, but we already talked about this before. Even if the state is bad, we're not necessarily contesting the fact that the state is bad. We're just saying that we need to be able to engage in the state, one, to learn educational stuff. Secondly, we need to learn about the state to be able to reject it in the future. My partner makes analysis on this, which they cold hard concede. At this point, it's going to be nearly impossible for them to win. Next, they talk about how onto the limits. They talk about how we actually contested the app and we ran with these generic things. Like generic arguments are not good arguments. There's not actually any debate coming out of running generic arguments. They say,
because it was bad.
yeah, we kicked it because the generic argument was bad. Like that's for specific proof that we're not able to engage because of this. Yeah, they vastly undercover this. Additionally, they talk about there's always skew, but even if there's always skew, we need to make sure to minimize the skew as much as we possibly can. And the way we do this is for the affirmative team to either disclose or not run a critical app, which the negation team never has any ability to never has any ability to respond to. Like they concede the entirety of the limits argument. The fact that we aren't able to engage. If we aren't able to engage, then this debate is literally not useful. Everything that the affirmative team is saying, we can't actually contest because we don't have the ability to engage with them. Which means that all the root cause arguments and all the things about poverty, how poetry is going to solve, literally does not matter because we don't know if that's true or not. Like they're just making these claims and we don't have the ability to contest that. Next, they concede onto the third thing. They concede the fact that our method solves because we need a devil's advocate. Like they never respond to this. The fact that even if the government is bad, we need a devil's advocate. They don't respond to this. Voters this is an a priori voting issue. You look at this verse. I think
It's a question of whose method of debate is better.
It's a question of whose method of debate is better, and we clearly show you with this framework sheet that our method of debate is clearly better. So at the point one, they're basically representing the subaltern in a way that to commodify the ballot is problematic. Additionally, they concede the majority of the framework shell if they don't make good responses. I think it's going to be a pretty clear neg ballot. Thank you.
The order will be case turns and then theory.
It's okay, strong framework.
Yeah, I don't know. Everyone ready?
They say in their 2AC that the app is a politics of liberation. This bites our terms so hard that it is not even funny. We make specific arguments under our third term that tell you that lionizing Western activists when they are still complicit in the systems of oppression that create this reinscribes this. They cold hard concede that, which means that, oh, we're liberating the Native Americans. The fact of the matter is that we use this Bystrom evidence to turn the case. They do not do a good job of answering this, which means that at the end of the debate, there's enough for you to pull the trigger on right there. It is an easy neg ballot from there. Now, they make the argument that our chow turns are not responsive to the affirmative, that they are speaking like with the oppressed. They're not here, right? The argument here is that, especially on our Bystrom argument, that like as long as they are demanding the ballot as a response to suffering, they serve to reinscribe the oppression. Now they say, oh, like we're not commodifying the ballot, we're speaking with these people. Like they said in their 1AC, Native Americans are suffering, please give us the ballot. That's essentially the app. So when it comes down to it, our chow case terms definitely apply, and since they don't make any arguments that they don't actually turn case, if we win a link, you vote. That is enough for you to vote. Let's just go over each one. So we tell you that representing the subaltern reinscribes these hierarchies, and like using the subaltern to gain leverage in a rhetorical victory reinscribes these oppression. They don't do a good job of answering that. Now they say that like the only place that they can gain offense on this is that they're speaking with them, not for them. But the fact of the matter is that they are not here. Now they're going to say that like, oh, we read this poetry from, I don't remember the exact name of the Native American, but like they have poetry from Native Americans, so obviously it's fine, right? No! That is the exact co-optation of the voice that all of these terms talk about. They literally take the Native American's voice, write it down on a sheet of paper, and read it to you, asking for a ballot, which means that our terms definitely apply. And at the point where they concede that if there is a link to the terms, it turns case, there is enough for you to vote neg on there. Another framework debate. They fundamentally misunderstand this. We are winning framework at the point where we tell you that, like, even if the United States federal government is like crazy and evil, which there's no guarantee that it is since it's more just a collection of individuals, right? Like, it's still good to defend implementation through the United States federal government because it forces debaters to make more difficult decisions and understand how the USFG works. So if you buy that it is oppressive and you think that it is oppressing the Native Americans, knowing how it functions and gaining that knowledge from debate has a better risk of solving the app in the long run because we will be better able to challenge it instrumentally in the long run. They don't do a good job on that argument. There's nothing for you to vote for them on framework. Now they say that like poetry is first. We don't really care if poetry comes first for solving the case because the question is not who solves better, it's which method of debate is better. And if we can prove to you that organizational decision making is key, even if you're not working within the United States federal government, learning about one of the biggest organizations on earth is necessary to making good organizational decisions, and they don't answer that argument well, which means you vote there. Now, their counter-interpretation is they don't have to defend the resolution. Like, pretty much do, right? We're winning the organizational decision-making standards. We're definitely winning the limits argument, but, like, we don't really need to go for that in order to win. And one of the big things that we're going to be winning in today is this entire devil's advocate argument that they cold hard concede that, like, even if the USFG is bad, having a devil's advocate is key to prevent groupthink, right? And at the end of the debate, they concede that, which means there's enough for you to pull the trigger on for the neg here. Now, they also, like, they just don't handle organizational decision-making. Like, I don't really know what else I can say at this point. Because, like, the way that you should all sign your ballot is, first off, the chow turns. Like, we're winning those. I'll go over that in a second. But, like, at the end of the day, organizational decision-making is good because, like, even Native American tribes and stuff are organizations, right? You have to understand how to work with organizations to actually enact change. A personal advocacy statement doesn't do anything for furthering our knowledge of organizational decision-making. And they concede the analysis I make in the 1NC where I tell you that it's like running at high altitudes so that you can run faster. It's like training in Denver to run in Palo Alto, right? You get better at running in Denver, which means that we are making harder decisions under a model of debate, which makes it easier for us to make better decisions in the long run outside of debate, which means that our method of debate is best. So even if the USFG is racist and awful, defending it helps us make better organizational decisions in the long run, which allows us to challenge the USFG outside of the debate space where we don't have to commodify a ballot in order to try to help these Native American people who are being oppressed. So at the end of the day, you sign your ballot on chow turns because they're definitely not winning on the ballot turn at the very least, and you sign your ballot on organizational decision making. Go ahead.
All right, order case T. All right, everyone good? All right. LOL, you cannot read policy back policy. If you have not read the literature, you have not had a misunderstanding of what Tao is saying. He's talking about suffering of narrative and how they're able to function. When you see the policy deliberation, we read poetry to be consistent with the Native American voice. Our aim is not that we speak on behalf of the Native American other, but rather we are speaking with them. That is the reason why we start off the one to see with a reading of their poetry to be able to challenge the ways that what's called oppression able to function. Now let's go to line by line. First of all, you said Chow, the affirmative, the repetition voice. We cannot represent the voice. We give them a space for discussion that allows them for them to advocate what they want. It's exactly what we start off the one to see with the reading of their discussion making.
Alright, sorry. The argument here is that Chow criticizes us twisting their words to our own, like,
Yeah.
Chow, you read their words.
Yeah. Chow criticizes the ability for us to
Point of
twist their word for it.
The whole analysis on, like, Chow actually says this is probably new and could have been made in the
That was
MD.
literally at the top of the case law of the TOC. That was the first argument I made.
It's cool. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Chow is able to indicate that we're twisting narratives, able to change the way that we have allocating arguments, not that, but rather we are able to present the voice in a way that will be consistent with the subaltern voice. You can see a lot of arguments in a world where we do not present the subaltern voice. I need to be able to allow them to be included in discussions like this without the reading of the poetry allows their voice to be always silent in spaces like this causing subaltern oppression to occur on a daily basis. They say that represent the voice of the oppression. First of all, we do not speak on behalf of the other. You have conceded that methodology before identity, which means that it's not just be a question of our identity, but rather the way that it's also functioning. You have also not made a reason why we are not Native American, which means that you should not be able to grant access on how we are speaking on behalf of the oppressed, which means that we probably solve the argument because we could probably be Native American. You assume certain things about us that are not characterized properly in the 1NC next argument. You say that,
Well, this is a pretty important argument. You say that when we advocate that we are speaking or we're giving poetry, they're not here. Arguments that they do not have to be here.
Point of order, the argument that we are Native American was probably no.
Okay, just terminal defense argument is that. Alright.
our
argument is, even if they're able to win the argument that indicates that they were not here, arguments that there will never be in discussions like this because they have constantly been secluded. Arguments that Subaltern thesis is that they have demanded for us to give them back the land, which is a unity discussion. They have wanted to be in discussions like this, but no one gives a shit about it. Our argument is that because of that, we, from speaking from institutions like where we are right now, have to be to allow them or give them access to our voice. That is why we start with the reading of their poetry, because it allows us to be able to formulate what the poetry is, what they want, and how they demand it. It's exactly why we start off with Chief Redcoat, who was able to advocate that he wants a discussion of giving back the land. Probably solves all of your arguments. Anything else?
No, you're good.
Yeah. Even if you really want to buy back the argument that we are a Western institution, this is practically just this is not outweigh on a single, does not outweigh scope because the status quo is probably not worth this question. We can see the question. Just even if they're able to win that, we are doing the institution to reinscribe their turn. It would only be a question of status quo. Yeah.
Wait, on the case law, really quick, address their commodification of ballots.
Oh, okay. First of all, this is a commodification of ballot. First of all, voting negative push our discussion to these exactly what Subaltern voice are able to constantly able to prescribe. This is a bad thing because it's a question of trade-off. We can either speak about Subaltern voice right now, or we cannot argue Subaltern voice probably come first because we're able to inscribe the way the functionality is able to function. Also, it's pretty important because we do not commodify the ballot. We believe that discussion, you should have worked to benefit the scholarship, which the upward is doing exactly why you also commodify the ballot, but it's not the suffering of the individuals. You can about the suffering of yourself, which is the reason you probably voted for it.
Point of order, the argument that we also commodify the ballot is probably new.
Okay, these are just insults for Chief after just going for it. I'm not really going for this reason for vote out. Now, you have considered why poetry is the only easy internally to be able to solve for any single form of oppression. For any point, you have to see the role of the ballot, which is the framing should be considered you can only give back the land through a reading of the destruction of you can give the top oppressive group upon the methodological is pretty important because even if they're able to win the turns, you cannot win the role of the ballot to be which precludes the ability for them to be able to win on and still be the opposite if I hold the church argument because they cannot win on their turns if they're able to not reap the results or the voice that is currently inscribed in team. Honestly, even if you don't buy the Chow turns, if you buy the Chow turns, they have conceded the impact turn to T. They have conceded the Rhetorical argument that we have made that indicate that the reason why we're able to have certain norms in debate is because we are able to give access to smaller norms that are prescribed to stuff like topicality that are able to impose on higher level that allows systematic violence to occur on a higher level. This is conceded impact turn, which is able to not only prove that the thesis of the theory is incorrect, but also reasons why, even if you're not able to present Subaltern voice, you cause more oppression to Subaltern, which is probably a bad thing. This is pretty important because the concession means that even if we're able to defend the USSD in the actions, our arguments that when we're able to present Subaltern voice that have been allowed to be able to regurgitate if we are able to accept smaller norms discussions like this, or prescribe bigger norms in bigger settings, which allows us to be able to reproduce oppression of Subaltern voices. This means that even a topic version of the F will be bad. They have considered multiple reasons. They have considered our counter-interpretation that we will be able to defend the right to evolution, which is that benefit us critical thinking. So outweigh all of your arguments of fairness in education because in a world where our knowledge of critical thinking is probably more important because we're able to present the idea that also you have considered the topic. You have considered the topic version is racist because it allows us to be able to split the Subaltern voice in a method that is probably not allowing us to give them back the land. They said that the topic version probably will not solve. This means that we can view the cases of disadvantage to the entire teach-all, which means that in a world where even if the United States federal government has good things where we can learn but things Christianity will not be a good thing because it allows racist politics to constantly be able to racist discourse to be able to constantly perpetuate against systems and settings like this in the first place. At the point where we're in their impact turn. If we win the impact turn, even if they win the Chow arguments, we will probably win the debate round. Because the idea of controlling norms and discussion makings like this in the first place are the exact reasons why these problems occur. Conceded impact turn, which means it's impossible because we have defense on all these of the Chow turn.
You're on it.